All right. Welcome, everybody, to our session of Plato's Timaeus. And we're happy to welcome Dr. Sebastian Moro to present to us this evening. So, we can, if we want to continue the conversation we were just having, that's quite fine. But whenever, Sebastian, you're ready to present, please feel free. So.
Only to connect with the topic that we were just referring to is the topic about the interpretation of text, of especially Platonic text or dialogues. We can apply what we were saying about the Parmenides, that the Neoplatonists were trying to find a deeper meaning in the text, and that depends on which faculty of the human being you are using to read the text. And we can apply that not only to the Parmenides, which is for Proclus and other Neoplatonists, it's not just a logical dialogue, it is more a metaphysical dialogue. So for the Timaeus, there is also a metaphysical reading of cosmology and mathematics, or music too, no? Because music is not just numbers, and it's not something that you do with reason or the mind alone, no? That's something that every musician knows, that you cannot play music only because I have attended different conferences and read many books about what is the meaning of harmony in Platonism and what is the meaning of this musical scale in the Timaeus. And the approach that explains it as only a rational harmony and the creation as a rational creation of reason is just something that is anachronical because it's like trying to present the demiurge of Plato as if it were only a reason. But the demiurge is an intellect in the Neoplatonic sense. So when you say that music is something intelligible in its highest level, you mean that this is more than something mental. Because I recall an anecdote when I was attending one of these conferences that someone asked one of the main authorities in these topics, and they asked him about, what about sensible music or the music that we can listen to? Was it important for Plato and the Neoplatonists? And the answer was, in a way, that music was something more mathematical, and that sensible music was just a derived aspect of the question. But I don't agree with this interpretation, because music can transform the person just by listening to the music. And the importance of sound must be taken into account. And that connects this with the idea of theurgy in Neoplatonism, for example. When you see mathematical numbers as more than quantities, you are thinking in a Pythagorean way. For the Pythagoreans, numbers are not just quantities. Numbers are an analogy of the metaphysical principles. So when we refer now in the Timaeus to a process of diakosmesis means creating a cosmos. These numbers and these harmonic ratios that create a musical scale are metaphysical principles of beauty at the same time, and are qualitative principles. So the Pythagorean mathematics is qualitative first, and then is quantitative, a quantity. So we need to take that into account when we are talking about these harmonic ratios based on numbers, that we are talking about more like Xenocrates would have been reading these numbers in the Timaeus. Is something like a living numbers, or the soul is like a living number. But because I want to connect my presentation with the last week presentation by Jacob, that he referred to both to order, creating order from chaos. That's one aspect. And he referred also to the notion of eros. And eros is very important in this context because eros is that energy of the world soul. And we are going to talk about a musical scale that corresponds to the world soul. And then for Plotinus, love is not just a relationship. Love is a ousia, is a reality, it is a principle. So when we say that love is the energy that connects all the levels in the universe, we are thinking something similar to proportion, sympathy, cosmic sympathy, and music or cosmic harmony. They are similar manifestations of the same connective energy of the whole universe. And we have one interesting notion, which is synergia, how the levels of reality are connected. In Platonism, we have this very important word, synergia, that means syn is with, and erôn is the participle of echo, is to have together, no? To join together, which is one of the definitions of harmony. Harmonia in Greek means fitting together. And this is one of the most important topics in the Timaeus, is the topic of mediation and the world soul as an intermediary between the intelligible and the sensible. And that's the reason because music is so important here, because music is the art of studying interrelations or relations between numbers, the intervals. Is the connective art, the art of connections, and linking together separate things. And as, for example, Alain Danielou and other musicologists like Marius Schneider, who wrote a lot about cosmic music, they mentioned this idea that to join two rigid things would be very difficult if you don't have a vibratory thing in the middle. You need to connect levels with vibration. And I will start a presentation that I prepared for this. If I need to cut it in, it's not, well, maybe I need to cut it. I will share it.
May I ask a question before we get into the presentation? Just something related to what we've been discussing, which is about this intelligible and sensible and noûs and doxa, which are, I think really key terms that Plato uses and important to understanding the argument. But I'm not sure I have an excellent, I have a really good understanding myself of the distinction. And I was also hoping you could help. One way I think about it is I sort of map it out to I don't know, deduction and induction, in that like the noûs, if you understand something noetically, you have a sort of certain knowledge. And if it's, if you're using doxa through sensibility, you can get some apprehension of things, but it's not as certain. The translation I'm using uses the term understanding for noûs and opinion for doxa, which I don't know. I don't know what you think of those translations, but if you could help me understand, what does he mean by noûs and doxa? And and I'm also curious. You were talking about noetic reading of the text and what that would mean.
Yeah, well, that's a very important question, and it's one of the most important questions for the Middle Ages, how the Latin translations of Greek texts translated the word noûs as intellectus, mens, ratio. There are many translations that sometimes they conflate. I think they don't give they don't give an exact translation of what is noûs, because noûs is intuitive, non-discursive. apprehension of intelligible realities. So it's more like an intuition, or more like a perception. It's like sense perception, but not of sensible objects, but of metaphysical objects. So it's more like an intuition, will be better for me, because understanding takes some steps, but noûs doesn't take steps. It's how do you say, instantaneous. It's a word that Plato uses in the Symposium, when Plato says that you follow a ladder of love, but then at some point, instantaneously, exiphness is in Greek, the word means like a bolt. How do you say, like in a when you are and see a ray of light, it's something instantaneously that happens instantaneously. So in a way, when we say intellect, we try to express this idea of non-discursive knowledge, which is related to music in a way that when you listen music, even if you are having some passage of time in the melody, there is always a reference to something beyond time, no? Something eternal. So when you speak about deduction and induction, that's something that we need to study in the Republic, where Plato says that there are hypothetical knowledge and knowledge that is not hypothetical, that is dialectics beyond deduction, going to the principles. When you have an intellection of the principles, is something that is depends on a faculty that is connected to eternal beings. It's not related to time or to proof or to dianoia. No, dianoia is the other faculty that is under, maybe if we are talking about levels, like in the Republic, in this line that Plato presents. Dianoia is the faculty of reasoning. So music, in a way, is related to this dianoia, but there is a meaning, and also in number, that goes beyond dianoia. But there was a problem that we need to read a book by Merland, which is called From Platonism to Neoplatonism, to understand what is the place of the mathematical being. Is it in dianoia or is it in noûs? Because the Pythagoreans talked about intelligible numbers. And there are other numbers that you need to follow some kind of or geometrical proofs that you use dianoia. But there are intelligible numbers, which are these numbers that we are going to see here in the Timaeus, which are beyond reason in a way, because they are, in reality, they are not numbers, they are principles of number. It's the monad, the dyad, the triad, or pentad, tetrad. These are principles, but I'm not sure if I'm answering, but it will be very clear with the examples of music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that helps on the noetic side, and I mean, I think the term noûs maps quite well to, you know, the Arabic term aql, which I'm more familiar with, you know, in Islamic philosophy, because it has that sense of direct, sort of a direct perception, a direct understanding, unintermediated, and I think that's similar to what you were saying about noûs.
Like revelation, right?
Mm-hmm,
revelation, sort of.
Yeah, vision, or, yeah, it's also another word.
Or epiphany.
Yes. Yeah, you mentioned in the chat, Lorenzo, the Dionysian aspect.
Yeah, because, well, I was using Dionysian in a Nietzschean sense, like that urge for the infinite, or the chaotic in a certain sense, or that sense of ecstasy that transcends form, matter, whatever.
Yeah, in a sense, we can connect this with the music, and Proclus mentions this in his commentary on the Timaeus, that the activity of the demiurge is both Dionysian and both Apollonian. And this is the Orphic point of view, to combine the Dionysian and the Apollonian. And that is also an example that I wanted to give of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, which combines both the Dionysian and the Apollonian, because you have when you have this intoxication, like in the second movement of the Ninth Symphony, the intoxication of dance also, it makes you connect with something that is goes beyond the divisions, because Dionysian are divisions, because the Dionysius was divided by the Titans. But then we need to reconnect him with the Apollonian medicine. And this is the vision of the intelligible, which is connected to, at the same time, in the, for example, in the Symphony of Beethoven is the third movement, which is the Adagio, that is in 7 variations. We have the number 7 that is very important. And at the end, the combination of both, or the synthesis. So I will say that noetic knowledge is the synthetic knowledge. Analytical mind is reason, and is the reason that divides. But metaphysical knowledge tries to find a synthesis. And musical synthesis is another expression of this.
So you mean when reasoning divides, you mean like composing and dividing, the medieval notion of composing and dividing, you know, reasoning. Like
Yes.
we reason in steps or something like that.
Yes, and also in time and space. But there is also this notion of also applying dialectics in a process of division. But also, I mean, when reason is applied to the sensible world, which for Plato and the Timaeus is the world, especially of divided realities. If I start the presentation, I will show these 2 levels in the text. We can say, well, is it showing okay?
Yes.
Well, this is some astronomical. Well, here we have the division between indivisible reality, or here Comfort translates existence, but I will prefer to call it being. Indivisible being that is ever the same state, and the divisible being that becomes embodies. So we have here the 2 levels. Noûs is the level that connects with the indivisible being. And dianoia is in between, and sensibility is that faculty that, and doxa, that deals with divisible existence. But dianoia is something that corresponds more to the soul. So we are going to see that this is the passage where Plato is talking about the composition of the substance of the soul. It's made by 3 elements, and he combines an intermediary part or aspect of this division, which is the first one between indivisible and divisible being. And then he does the same with other principles which are called sameness and difference. In order to understand this, some interpreters connected with the sophist of Plato, but we don't have time to refer to those other texts. But what we are going to see is that it is important that the soul is an intermediate being. It's something that is joining together these different levels of reality. And this is the classical interpretation of making first an intermediate aspect of these 3 principles, and then the world soul is made of these 3. So it's important that this triadic division is already appearing at the beginning of the text that makes an account of the creation of the soul, because as we are going to see, this triadic division is also very important for understanding musical intervals. There's always in a musical scale, like in the interval of the octave, there is the musicians and theoreticians were trying to find the middle point of the scale. But as we are going to see, it's not the same as with a geometrical reality. You cannot divide in music by half things because it doesn't work like that. That's the reason that music shows that not always rational division works, and not always quantitative division, like is more related to matter, will going to explain things, because music goes beyond these divisions. You cannot divide the tone. When you have a note followed by another, like if we are talking about A and B, you cannot find a semitone. That's something important. You need to find something proportional or a harmonic ratio, which is in the middle, but it's not exact middle. So that's the difference between exact mental things and living realities, which are metaphysical. It's more difficult to find a middle in those things. Yes, and we are going to see that there are arithmetic means and harmonic means, but in music, the geometrical mean will appear only as a productive cause, but not as a connecting cause. We are going to to see that this triadic structure also appears in the commentary of Proclus of the Timaeus and his elements of theology. We always have this idea that the soul is in between the intelligible and the sensible, and Proclus says as a definition that every soul is all things, the things of sense after the manner of an exemplar, and the intelligible things after the manner of an image. Because the soul is the paradigm of sensible things, but at the same time, the soul is an image of the intelligible. It's in between both realms. It's like the god Janus, which has two faces, says Plotinus. One face is looking to the intelligible, and the other face is looking to the sensible world. Well, and this is also connected to the idea of harmony, because as Proclus explains in his commentary, there are three levels of harmony. Harmony itself, which is the harmony in the intelligible realm. Plato always uses this kind of expression, the good itself, the beauty itself. And that's a way of expressing the idea of something. So this will be the ideal harmony. We can connect it with the god Apollo and the Muses. And then we have a second level of harmony, which is the first thing that has been harmonized, is the soul. This is the second kind of harmony. The harmony in the soul is in the middle, a harmony. And then we have the third kind of harmony, which is the world, which has been harmonized in a secondary manner, because his harmony comes through participation in the soul. If it were not for the soul, the world could not have harmony, because it needs this bridge between the intelligible and the sensible, which is the soul. Well, and then we are going to see that this structure of intermediate terms appears in the division of the substance of the soul. Here Plato says that after completing this first mix, the demiurge has, like in a cratera, it's a cup, a mixing cup or mixing bowl. The the creator has this mix of the soul in this mixing bowl and starts cutting portions. And well, I'm not going to read it because you can read it also, but in this account, you can see that there are portions that corresponds to numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 9, 8, and 27. Because of the way that the portions appear in the text. Well, since the first commentators of the text, there has been this kind of diagram of lambda, the Platonic lambda, to explain how these connections of the different portions work. We have the portion number 1 is at the top, which is like the starting point of what the Platonic will call procession, the exit from the principle, or the emanation from the principle at the top. Then we have a double progression, which is geometrical progression or series. With this on the left side, we have the doubles, and on the right side, we have the triple progression. These two are geometrical because they grow in geometrical proportion, double and triple. And this is interesting because for the Pythagoreans, there were two principles of the cosmos, which were peras and apeiron, or the limit and the unlimited, or the limiters and the unlimited, which were the main elements of the creation and also of number, the main principles of number. What Plato is doing is applying the derivation of number that the Pythagoreans were doing to speak about the derivation of reality from the intelligible realm. So when we are talking about creation, music and mathematics are used to express that the idea of creating something external is not to be taken literally. Because when you create something with as a production, as poiesis, you create something that is external to you. But when you create music, it's different. You create something that is at the same time something external, but it's something that you have inside. And also, when there is a derivation of number, everything stays connected with the principle. When you create something like a pot or something like a table, the table stays outside you. But this creator creates something that stays connected with this creator. No, it's the creation and the creator are the same in a way, but not the same, as we are going to see in Plotinus maybe later, when he explains this as emanation of light or perilampsis. Well, this is another example that the 7 numbers of the Timaeus were also considered later in the context of medicine, because all these portions need to be reunited. We have Apollo and Dionysius here. Maybe I need to, if I go here, maybe I can, well, maybe you can see it better. Apollo here and Dionysius. And these are 7, like in the 7 numbers of the Timaeus. This is Robert Flatt. But I mention it because it's for the Platonists, harmony and medicine were both the arts of Apollo. And another thing is that Ygea, or health, was connected to number 5. And we can say that this pentagon and and it was related to the proportions, to the musical proportions, and the importance of the interval of fifth and number 5, and the pentad also as marriage, and the combination of the number 3 and number 2 was something that it was always in the background. No, when we speak about the importance of pentachords or 5 notes, is connected with this idea. And also, there, as many of you will know, there is a cycle of fifths. So this is connected with this idea of reconnecting with unity. Well, I'm going to mention Iamblichus and Proclus' interpretation of these two progressions, because they interpret that the even numbers and the dyad is the principle of procession, of differentiation. And number 3, on the other hand, of the progressions, is connected to return, or epistrophe, reversion, return to unity. Because when you have a triangle, for example, the triangle is already a new unity. But Proclus continues and connect number 4 and the tetrad with the soul itself. This is because the soul is also an image of a living being that is divided in 4 in the Timaeus. In the previous section, when Plato mentions that there is a intelligible living being, which is the paradigm of the living world, and it's divided in 4 because of the 4 elements. But for the Pythagoreans, this was connected with the idea of the tetractis, which is the principle of number 10 in a triangular form, which corresponds to the first 4 numbers. I want to show that later, but then Proclus interprets number 9 as perfection and a new one, and number 8 on the side of the double progression is procession of all things, and number 27 on the right hand of the lambda diagram is the reversion of the sensible, the last of the things, the last of the sensible things. So this helps us to understand that the musical scale should be read in a descending order, because number 27 must be connected with the sensible world, and if in a way we can connect this with cosmic musical scales, like the harmony of the spheres, and I will show that later. Well, this is a diagram of these numbers, and why the doubles are procession and the triple are return in different levels. No, the world soul is in the middle. And the importance of number 4 for the harmony of the world soul, I want you to recall this when we will be talking about the tetractis and all the intervals that are present, the main intervals from 1 to number 4. This is the Pythagorean tetractis. And this was very important for the Pythagoreans because it contains all the main ratios for the musical scale. The ratio of the octave, which is 2 to 1, the ratio of the fifth, which is 3 to 2, and the ratio of the fourth, 4 to 3. And all these numbers add up to 10. So this is the decad in a triangular form. We can read this also as number 9 with a center in the middle, which would be Apollo and the Muses. That's another interpretation. It's an analogy between the circle and the triangular. because in many temples or buildings, you see that there are, for example, 8 columns or 16 columns in the lower part, and you have the highest part, this tympano, is represents the heavens. Well, this is a very important number, which is 26, but I cannot explain it now because it's 16 plus 10, but it's very important in different texts. We are going to start referring to the musical ratios and why there is Plato refers to this when he's speaking about the creation of the soul, because he's talking about creating cosmos, and cosmos, for creating a whole unity, you need to have something that keeps showing it together, and these are the main intervals that make possible this octave. For example, the first philosopher that we have fragments speaking about this is Philolaus of Croton, and he also mentions the same intervals. The tonos, or the whole tone, is the difference between the fifth and the fourth. And this is what happens, or what we are going to see in this text of the Timaeus, which explains that the musical scale that was manifested with the 7 numbers that he mentioned before is a musical scale, because we need to fill up all these double and triple numbers. If they stay alone and separated, they will not create a cosmos. They need to be connected, or as Plato says, the intervals are going to fill up the double and the triple intervals. And he speaks here about the harmonic mean and the arithmetic mean, because with this, between those numbers, he's going to show the fourth and the fifth, which are the intervals of 3 to 2 and 4 to 3, and 9 to 8 is the tone. In order to explain this symmetry of the scale, it's important to notice the relation between numbers 6, 8, 9, and 12. We have this diagram here that appears in the tablet that the character of Pythagoras has in his hand in the School of Athens by Raphael. And as you can see, when you try to find the middle point in an octave, the middle is not something that you can find in a geometrical way. The middle is a tone that is in the middle. There is no way of dividing this in half. You need to divide it in a symmetrical way. And we are going to see that the same happens when you want to divide the interval of fours. You cannot divide this in half. It's important because you need to have the interaction of 2 means, the harmonic mean and the arithmetic mean. 8 is the harmonic mean because exceeds 6 by a fraction, which is 1/3 of 6 or 2, and 12 also exceeds 8 by 4, which is the same fraction, 1/3. The arithmetic mean is number 3, between 6, 9, and 12. It's easier to find that one. When you have all these numbers in the Timaeus from 1 to 27, you need to find then the harmonic mean and the arithmetic mean between 1 and 2, 2 and 4, 4 and 8, and also the same for the other progression, the triple progression. if we combine both of them, we find these different fourth and fifth between octaves. And well, this is more technical, and then I will start talking about the metaphysical aspects. But then there was a problem when musicians wanted to divide the tone. As I was saying, you cannot divide the tone in a semitone. There is no such a thing as a semitone. There are in music, or in Greek music, you can find, there are other ways of doing this, but the Greeks were using these proportions, which is the lemma and the apotome. The lemma or lemma is the interval that you find when you have two tones. Two tones is this 9 to 8. When you multiply it by 2, you have this fraction, 81 to 64. And if you divide it, if you divide the interval of fourths, you find this fraction, no? 256 and 243. This is the lesser semitone, or it's called also the diatonic semitone. And once you have this semitone, if you want to find the apotome, you have to divide the whole tone, or you have to find the difference. No, you divide the whole tone and the lemma, and then you will find this other fraction. Well, this is more complicated, but when the interpreters of Plato Timaeus were trying to see if the semitones that Plato was using were chromatic or were diatonic, this was the problem that they find. For many of the interpreters like Proclus, Plato only used the lemma or lemma because it's what Plato says in the text. And Plato used this participle, leiftheses, which means the rest or leftover. And well, here we have all the numbers of the Timaeus. They are filled together with these other intervals: 1, 2, 2, 4, 4, and 8. 8 and 9 is the other number of the progression, and then 27. And all these are the different harmonic and arithmetic means, and these are the proportions. But as you can see, it's very difficult to make calculations with fractions. So if you multiply the number 1 by 384, you can do the calculations without using fractions. So this will be the same two progressions multiplied by 384, and the harmonic means and the arithmetic means. This was very important for Proclus and other commentators of the Timaeus. They started using these numbers instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 9, and 27. They changed it. They changed them with these more simple numbers. And then we can start thinking about something that is more philosophical, because Proclus says that although it's important to visualize this as two progressions, like in a lambda letter, it's also important to see that the soul is like a straight line, starting in the 1 and going towards the sensible world, because in this way, the vertical dimension that connects all the levels of reality was more easy to follow. And here Proclus says that he prefers to make a diagram in a straight line. Later, this was represented as a monochord, as this instrument that is only one string represented in a vertical way. The whole cosmos is like a vertical string. This is for those of you who read music. Number one can correspond to the sound E, and then we have the octaves and the first fifth, and then the first fourth here. And the double of 3 is 6, and we have here again the important sequence of 6, 8, 9, and 12, and the double of this is 12, 16, 18, and 24. And there is one more note to complete the scale, because for Proclus, and as many other interpreters, the scale has a range of 4 octaves, 1/5, and 1 tone. 4 octaves, and it's better if we represented this in a line, like in this diagram. No, this one. Let me. Here we have the numbers that appear in Plato Timaeus, 1, 2, and the others in black, no? And 6, 12, 16, and 18 are doubles of the other ones, which is their octaves. And then here we have the numbers starting with 384. And as we can see, there are 2 octaves here from 1 to 4. And then we have other 2 octaves from 6 to 24. And in the middle, I propose to place the 5th. This for me is important because one can see a passage from the intelligible to the sensible. That's a way of making an interpretation. This is not something that Proclus says in a direct way, but what Proclus says is that the scale is divided in 18 notes and 16 notes. So the middle of the scale will be in this number 6, which is an A sound. So we have some transition here from these 2 octaves which are in this Dorian, ancient Greek Dorian mode, which can represent the original tetractys from 1 to 4, or the intelligible world. But then we have this other scale, or 2 octaves that start in this note A, which are 15 notes plus 1 tone. Number 15 was very important in Greek theory, because 2 octaves were what it was called, let me go, the perfect system in Greek music. The perfect system was something that was first appears systematized in the works by Aristoxenos of Tarento, and presents this middle octave in Dorian from E to E, and then we have other tetrachords, one on top and one below. And to make 2 octaves, or 15 notes, they added another note, which is called the proslambanomenos, or added note. The ipate is the lowest although it means highest in space, it means the lowest note, and nete means the highest note. And the mese is very important because the mese is something that is in between the highest and the lowest sound. And harmony was considered to be this kind of mix or crisis between high sounds and low sounds or pitch. Here, this is another way of representing the greater perfect system of Aristoxenus. And this later in history was considered to be the source of the harmony of the spheres. These are Renaissance representations. But when Plato starts talking about the circles of the world soul, I'm going a little fast here because I don't have much time, but when we reach these lower 2 octaves, we can see that maybe it's possible to represent the harmony of the planets and another octave representing the circle of the same, which for Plato is this sphere of the world soul that contains the planets. Well, both circles are the circles in the world soul, but the circle of the same is the circle that contains with the sphere of the stars. So if we start, if you remember that the last note in the Timaeus scale was 1 tone, we have here the 15 notes that we've been talking about in the perfect system of 2 octaves, plus 1 more note, which is Earth in the harmony of the spheres, and corresponds to letter G. Like the last note in the Timaeus scale is G, that it's probable that this representation of the G is the origin of the word gamma, that means scale. Gamma means the letter gamma, but the musical scale is also called gamma in Latin, no? A gamma is a scale. Well, and as we can see later in other representations, for example, in Gafurius or Gafori of the 15th century, all these notes correspond to the muses on the one side and to the planets on the other, and Apollo is on top. Apollo is on top like the monad, like the number 1 in the Timaeus scale. And this will represent the connection of music. This serpent is the serpent that Apollo conquers. The python is the serpent that Apollo conquered in Delphi. Well, here I cannot enter into this, but let's go back then to the Timaeus scale. The Timaeus scale, as I was trying to show, ends in this sound that is G sound, number 27, that is a tone. And then we have this A, and it goes to another double octave and to the middle. And Proclus says that it's very interesting that the scale is divided in 18 plus 16, because these 34 terms, there are 34 components or notes, correspond to the number of the muses, and the sirens double, because the muses are 9. But if you double the number of the muses is 18, and the sirens that appear in the Republic of Plato are 8, and you double the number of the sirens, and that is 16. And for Proclus, this would represent the intelligible world with the muses and the sensible world with the sirens. And another important thing is that we can find this interval here, which is the middle note or messe of the whole scale. Because in the greater system of the Greeks, the messe is here, this A sound. And these are only 15 notes, but if you have 34 notes like here, you also have a messe here, which is between number 2048 and 2304, which is also a tone, which is in the reason of 9 to 8. 9 is also connected to this number 18 and 8 to the number 16. Proclus interprets this in this way, no? That this note in between 18 and 16 corresponds to the paramesse, which is the number of the soul for Plato, the interval of the soul, because it's in the middle. As when we started, we were talking about that the soul is in the middle of the two worlds. For Proclus, this would be represented in this interval between 18 and 16. It would be the middle note. And it's also interesting that the sun has been connected also with this interval in different testimonies. For example, we have also an inscription which is called the Canopus inscription, ascribed to Ptolemy, where the sun also corresponds to number 18 and Venus and Mercury to number 16. But for Proclus, this is the relation between the intellectual harmony, or noera harmonia, the harmony of the noûs, and the sirens represent the harmonia somatoides, the harmony of the body, of the world. Another way to make these counts to reach 34, according to Proclus, is Apollo 1, Muses 9, celestial sirens, the sirens of the planets, and terrestrial sirens. This is something that Proclus mentions in the Commentary on the Republic, because the sirens appear as the spheres of the planets at the end of the Republic. And let me go back to another representation. If we have these numbers in the scale of the Timaeus from 384, we find in number 1536, that will be number 4, is E, a sound E. This reappears in Guido d'Arezzo, which was a very important musicologist. And this is a work that was published in Venice in the 16th century. And Sarlino says that Guido used this as a representation of the Pythagorean diatonic scale. And as maybe it's very small here, but you can see that he's using the same numbers as Proclus is using. And we have the letter gamma also here for this number 27. So the gamma starts like as the additional tone, and then we start again with the perfect system of the Greeks from A, B, C, D, E, and it goes up the scale until this number 1536. So it's the same as the last part of the scale of the Timaeus. And so we find it's very interesting to know how this is possible, know how this connection, if they were reading Proclus or maybe they were reading other texts that Proclus based his analysis, which was called the Timaeus of Locrus, origin of on the nature of the world soul and cosmos. Let me see if I have sorry, I'm not finding the reference to that text, but I have it somewhere here. Maybe, well, no, I don't remember where was that. But if I can continue with this idea, why it's a double scale in the last part of the scale of the Timaeus important is because in medieval times and also in Renaissance documents, you can find that this double octave was connected with the planets and also with the muses. And then you have another scale which was not assigned. These different scales appear in this book. I forgot to mention it. It's The Harmony of Heaven and Earth by Jocelyn Godwin. He presents many cosmic scales and metaphysical scales. And here we have also the scale of the Timaeus, and Godwin also chooses the same notes as my interpretation of Proclus, which starts with an E and arrives to this G sound. And there were other correspondences, no, between planets and angels. So we have again the double scale, the double octave. And this is Indian correspondences presented by Jocelyn Godwin. Athanasius Kircher also presents these planetary and scales also connected to the muses. And this one that I already showed. But with this, I was trying to show that the scale of the Timaeus is not just some representation of a way of saying that the world is harmonized as a musical scale, but it's something deeper. It means that in order to create a living being, if the parts of this living being are not connected in a musical way, this energy of life cannot reach all the levels. So music, in a way, is something that connects with the soul as a principle of life, or as a life-giving principle. So this, that some people interpret as just numbers, they are more than numbers, and music must be something that when you study this and try to play these intervals, makes the human soul more refined, more connected to its own essence, because Plato is trying to say that the essence of the world is behind these numbers. So if one tries to focus on these numbers and and not only these ones, these are just an example, because there are other numbers that can represent the different intervals or other cultures, for example. And this is something that a rational interpretation or a mental interpretation of these numbers cannot explain. Well, I think maybe we can stop here and start the questions.
I have kind of a technical question, if that's okay.
Yes.
So I was just unclear. If you go to the chart that has all the pitches in the scale, and then it has these large numbers.
Yes.
It has like the 10,000. Yeah. So I understand these as ratios. Where exactly are you getting these numbers that you're associating with them?
Well, these numbers is only multiplying 1 by 384, and then you have all the others are multiples. If you multiply 2 by 384, you get or if you multiply 3 by 384, you get this one. But at the same time, this is one tone.
Okay.
In relation 9 to 8. And
so 9 to 8 is actually the same ratio as 432.
Yes, and also
okay, I understand.
Double of this is 768. But if you multiply 768 by 2, you get this 1536.
Sure, I understand.
Yes.
And why 384? What was the rationale behind that?
It seems that that was found by the author of this book, Timaeus of Locrus, and it's the first number that you can find that makes the calculations easier without fractions. But it's also related to this, to the apotome.
Okay, I think I understand.
Numbers, the ratio of the apotome appear here. If you remember, 2001-87 is here. 2001-87 is the apotome which is the chromatic semitone, is B flat. So maybe,
and so that actually is there as an option in the scale here, the altered B.
It's an option. Proclus doesn't mention this one because Proclus mentioned all these numbers, and we know that he doesn't use this one because he also says that all these add up. There is the addition of all these numbers, and he uses this one and this one at the same time. Yes, he uses, but not this one.
So he uses this lower B flat then.
Yeah, but only in two places, not in all the diagram.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. That clarifies that. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
It's a lot of math.
Sorry that I didn't mention the author of this Timaeus of Locrus text, which is the first text that uses these numbers. Oh, in the chat we have more. Yeah, but thank you for the question, because I needed to clarify this, where these numbers come from.
Thank you.
Dr. Moro, I had a question.
Yes.
Thank you for the presentation, first of all. Well, two questions. The first is, for somebody who's unmusical or untrained in music completely, I mean, I tried to follow along, but would Jocelyn Godwin's book be a kind of good stepping stone for somebody who's not that technically savvy with respect to this science? I mean, would I get much out of reading that without much of a music background?
Yes, because there are many books by Jocelyn Godwin And not all of his books are technical. He has collections of texts, like I have, well, there are many books. One is called, my camera is in mirror, or can you see?
No, I can see it. Yeah, the Secret Love of Music.
This is one of translation of Fabre d'Olivet, a French author. And you have, well, the Harmonics of Heaven and Earth. And Music, Mysticism, and Magic is a source book.
All right, thank you.
There are more, like the Harmony of the Sphere. And last, we have Cosmic Music. It's a collection of other authors. But these are more like the more metaphysical books. There are more technical books like those by Andrew Barker, more technical about music, Greek music in general.
I did have a question though. I know from what I remember, I think it's in the Phaedrus, there's a discussion of the descent of the souls that they before they descended, that they were following in the train of particular gods, I believe. I think he references Mars and some of the others. Does that have any, I mean, vaguely, does that have any bearing on, if I can word it correctly, if I understand the musical path of a particular soul back up to the heavens, in the sense that, if I'm understanding this correctly, the role of music and an understanding of music within the pedagogical approach or the curriculum of the Platonists, is it a sort of, I mean, it's not the same, is it to trigger a sort of recollection within the soul of its origin, but not quite in a, I mean, it's not dialectic as such, obviously. It's operating at a different level. Would that be fair to say?
Yes, I think it's very appropriate to refer to the anamnesis thanks to music in the context of the Phaedrus, because these sciences are all related to the god Hermes or Mercury, which is, for the Platonist, is the god of the logos or memory too. And this music and mathematics are the science that awaken memory. Proclus says that in the commentary on the Alcibiades. The first Alcibiades, Proclus has a commentary, and he says that mathematics are the way of reconnecting with the ideas and starting this recollection. And also we need to remember that music comes from the Muses, and the Muses are the daughters of Mnemosyne, which is the goddess of memory. So the context of remembering this harmony of the spheres was also connected to the descent of the soul into the world and forgetting that music and trying to reconnect with that music. There is a text that is famous in Cicero, at the end of the Republic of Cicero, the Somnium Scipionis, the dream of Scipio, where he mentions this idea that the Pythagoreans remembered the music that once heard before the soul came into the earth. So music in a way is a way of remembering. And it's good that you mentioned the Phaedrus, because I was mentioning the ninth of Beethoven, and if you allow me, I can share the beginning of the ninth, which also shows these intervals that appear in the Timaeus. And also at the end, there is a section where the text of Schiller says that the souls, they climb the spheres of the heaven. And there is this kind of music that is like a march because it's the struggle of the soul, is the solo of the tenor solo in the last movement of the ninth represents this the struggle to ascend in the Phaedrus. But if we can, I forgot also to mention that the ninth of Beethoven represents these fifth intervals of fifth and fourth as the primordial creation. We can see this in the beginning of the Ninth Symphony with the score. I have it here, but I need to share it. Let me share it. I'm not sure if you can see the. I need to. I'm sorry that I'm still a little slow in at this time of the day, but I need to. I don't know. It's still working. I think I froze.
No, you're still coming through. I guess I wonder, do you know where
Yes.
what were Beethoven's sources, for integrating this into his work? I mean, maybe we can go into that as well.
We can talk about it. No, yes, Beethoven was reading Plutarch and other texts, and especially Schiller, and he had some notions of the mysteries of Isis or Isis. And I'm not sure if so he had this inscription in his desk about the one and the mysteries of Isis that he found in Schiller's text and other romantic or the first writers of between classicism and romanticism. You can see the score. I think I need to share sound. Here we have this fifth and the fourth. This is the fifth and the fourth.
Are you able to increase the volume on YouTube?
Yeah, I think there might be. Do you have to hit a setting that says to share sound from your computer? I think.
Yes, I think
the sound was coming, but just softly.
Oh,
I think.
okay.
I don't know why that happened. I'm sorry that I'm a little slow.
No worries.
Let me say if it is coming. Well, I'm not sure if you're hearing it, but
we are hearing it now. That's great.
Okay.
But yeah. But, so please, yeah.
What I was trying to say is that this start of the symphony can represent the start of the creation, maybe, or the origin of the world, in these same terms, that there are these descending intervals that start with the same note of the scale of the Timaeus, the E sound. Is a fifth, and then you have a fourth, E to A and A to E. And here in the bass, you have also E to A. And they reappear then in, here you find it then in D minor. In D minor, because then the tonality of the symphony is E minor, D minor. So here we have in E. And what I'm trying to say is that why Beethoven chose the E sound as the center of the symphony, because we need to take into account that this is connected with the idea of the sun. It was represented with the sound D in the scale of the harmony of the spheres. If I show again this, you will see that in this musical scale, the D represents sun or sol in Latin. And this was common in these scales. No, Dorius in the new Dorian is the sun. And for this conception, the sun was the middle of was the representation of the world soul as well. Like here, no, and here there are the other notes, but the sun is in the middle. But that's another anecdotal thing, no, about the tonalities. But I'm sorry, I was a little dispersed. There are many commentaries in the chat.
Dr. Moro, gracias por su tiempo. I have a question about the intellectual harmony and the bodily harmony. So is this something that can also be taken on the individual level? There is a harmony between your intellect and your own body? And could you talk a bit more about that?
Oh, that's very interesting, and appears later in the Timaeus about the reconnection of the harmony of the human soul with the world soul, and this is connected with the idea of the mixing bowl, where the demiurge creates the world soul, because at the end of this passage, Plato says that the demiurge goes back to the same mixing bowl to create the human soul, and this human soul has the same numbers inside. Now, all this musical scale that we were depicting here in about the cosmic soul is also inside the human soul. But the problem for Plato is that it is disarranged when it enters. The name of the mixing bowl is the crater or crater, I think it's in English, crater, but in Greek is crater or crater. So it's also called cratera. It's the famous mixing bowl that you can see in many museums. Yes, it's something like a bowl for mixing wine and water. No, I think it's crater is with eta. Yes, I should write it like this. So when we think about this, we need to take into account that the soul, when it enters into the body, it is all the circles are disarranged, and with music we can arrange them back. And that's the importance of this Pythagorean music that was devised for making these circles harmonious again. So that will be the reason of the importance of the musical therapy in the Timaeus. And I think it's around Timaeus 47 that Plato says that we need to listen to the harmonies of music to rearrange the harmonies in the soul. I think if we go to 45b, he talks about the eyes and then after this in 47 he talks about hearing. And he says something that the same as our sight is to look at the harmonies of the planets in the heavens, the hearing is specially designed for hearing the harmonies of the universe. And well, this was what Iamblichus in his Life of Pythagoras says about Pythagoras, that he created some remedies for his disciples for rearranging the movements of the soul. That's important also because of what I was mentioning about tuning. These proportions are not the same in the Western musical scale, because when you have these temperate scales, all the tones are the same, and the fifth, and I don't know if you know about this, the notion of cents, no? The cents, an octave is 1,200 cents. And if you divide it by 12, you have all 12 semitones that are 100 cents. But that doesn't allow you to have the difference between the apotome and the lima that Plato or Proclus were talking about. Well, this maybe is a topic that can be expanded, no? The topic of the harmony of the human soul and in connection with the cosmic soul is a very important topic in the Timaeus.
Professor, I had one other question. With respect to the theurgy that we find in, for example, Iamblichus, there's mention, it's been a while since I've read it, but of the synthemata, I don't know, the material symbols that are used.
Yes, synthemata.
I'm sorry for my pronunciation, but
synthemata, yes.
From what I remember, those can be, they're material, right, in nature, and they have a sort of conductive capacity. Now, do we know if music played a role in Iamblichus's practice in any way? Is there? I can't remember if he brings it up. I know he talks about different phenomena, like you can experience the manifestation of different deities or daemons or heroes. But is there?
Yes.
Can music be a type of? I mean, it's not material as such, but it seems like it's in that middle space, as you alluded in your presentation, between, the use of minerals or I guess animals or whatever it may be, and the purely intelligible world. That music might be, I don't know, symbolic loosely in a way, and conductive.
Yeah. Many of these philosophers interpreted music in the way that you are talking about. Is Ficino, for example, no? He used to play different scales or hymns to different gods. And this is a practice that also maybe comes from the Greek mysteries and from also the hymns to the gods, to the Greek gods. And we can also mention that everything that for Iamblichus is material, it's, as you were saying, a way of reconnecting with the intelligible by means of Siurgi, no? Siurgi. And in his work on the mysteries, Iamblichus mentions that the sun makes a noise or a sound, and he uses the word roisos. Roisos is some kind of sound like whirring sound, or that he mentions is connected with the idea of the vehicle of the soul. No, that is the connection with this. Is the purification of this the mind, or the body of the spiritual body of the soul? No? That music is important in this context, because if you, as you were mentioning, there are other theurgical uses of metals, rocks, or jewels, or animals, like represent other principles. Music, in a way, is more connected to something above these material things. No, it's more related to this subtle body that contains the soul. And it was for this theurgist, I think it was a way of connecting with a purification of this vehicle that is like a vibratory body, because for some of these philosophers it was made of ether, which is more subtle than the other elements. In a way, music is connected to what the Indians call the sattvic element or quality in reality, because the Indians call these gunas or qualities, no? Sattva, rajas, and tamas. Tamas is this gravity, or it also leads to confusion. But rajas is this, can be related to passion and expansion. But sattvic and the ether, or the akasha, which is the space, which is connected to this subtle body, is, for these philosophers, what is activated by music. So that's the reason that in India or in Greece, music was a heavenly directed activity. No, in India it's called svarga, that it leads you to the heaven. And sattvic means the same. No, is that quality that enhances the soul or the spiritual part. I'm reading the chat also. Yes.
Well, that's very interesting, because I'm thinking as we were right at, in the West, and, whether in the Islamic, Jewish, or Christian world, there was the continuation of Galenic medicine, right, which had a very similar theory of the humors. I mean, if you were to translate sort of the conception of, sattva, rajas, and tamas into that language, how do you think, how would we do that?
Yeah, that's it's complicated, because the Greeks, some of them have used the 4 elements, not all of them use the 5th element, and also these qualities may be connected to a tripartition of the soul, maybe in Plato, but not as qualities also present in the world. But yeah, maybe we can connect it with the Empedoclean philosophy, and also this idea of the humors that are 4 and the 4 elements. but I'm trying to see the correspondences because in the Indian system, they are also connected with the five senses, no? And the listening is connected with the ether or akasha. But in Greece is different. In Greece, they didn't connect. Some of these also, like the Orphic and the Pythagoreans, they did connected sound with ether. But others explain sound in terms of air, like also in the Timaeus, Plato says that sound is some kind of shock in the air. But for the Indians, sound is more connected with akasha and the sattvic quality. But yes, it's a difficult question, but I think it can be related with all the idea of titans and gods. The titans are Rajasic, I think, because they are or passionate as well, no? Like in or tamas. But the celestial gods in Proclus or intelligible gods, they will lead to, because these gunas, I think they can be also gods or deities. I'm not sure. I need to study these connections better.
And you said there was some. Yeah, thanks for joining us, Paul. Glad you could make it. Yeah,
Thank you very much.
think.
Thank you.
So you were just speaking there of kind of right. So it sometimes they would connect sound to ether and sometimes to air, right?
Yes.
And I'm looking just now. It reminded me of this little piece from the Corpus Hermeticum, which I wondered about because, you know, there's this note that says the matter composed of the finest particles is air, but air is soul, soul is mind, and mind is God. And I'm curious. I mean, that sounds like ether to me in a way. But I'm kind of, how would you? And I never quite understood precisely how he's coming to making these. I also, when he says is right, is that a, does he, I mean, what is he doing when he says that, air is soul, soul is mind, and mind is God?
Yes, I think we need to go back to Empedocles, where sometimes there is this identification of air or air with some humid part of the air and the luminous part of the atmosphere, and with light is ether. So it's another kind of air, but it's more luminous or full of light and sound maybe. And the other air is the more closest to the ground and is humid. So I think there are two kinds of air maybe, and so that's the reason that they can connect air with mind. And also in the Anima of Aristotle, he mentions an Orphic theory that the soul is carried by the wind, no, and pneuma and wind and air. It was all connected in the same context, no? The notion of air, pneumatic body. So it's connected to this idea of wind, the wind carrying the soul. But there are different interpretations, no? If we read Peter Kingsley Empedocles' Philosophy and Magic, I think it's called his book, he has a whole section about the difference between air and ether.
Thank you. And as I'm sure you know, there's kind of this idea, both in the sort of in the Indian tradition, which you see both in kind of the Hindu stream, and then the Buddhist one, which is transmitted to Tibetan Buddhism, kind of where of the prana, or what in Tibetan they call lung, kind of but the consciousness rides on the breath, or on spirit in the, I guess, in the etymological, right? The but I also want to understand, because it seems like though there's this other conception where actually fire is the celestial element, right? Where fire, you know, the flaming seraphs and the fiery chariots. So how do we, in a sense, it seems like sometimes one can be higher and another can be higher and more ethereal, as it were. And I think
yes. Well, that is for Proclus and Plotinus is because all the elements are also ideas of the elements. So there are terrestrial elements, but there are also intelligible elements. And ones are manifestations of the others. And we can say that fire is also this divine fire, or the sun ray, the ray of the sun is also the divine. And the creation is also a way of finding this spark of fire, everything, or sowing fire in everything. Yeah, or Heraclitus also, no, that mentions that logos is fire. So there are different correspondences, but I think Proclus and Plotinus explain these references to divine fire or divine air, or even earth is present in the intelligible world. No, I think it's related to what Plato calls the living intelligible being, that is made of four, like in the Bible in Ezekiel, this tetramorphos. That tetramorphos contains the four elements as well, but in Plato is called the living being. I think it's in number 30, if I'm not mistaken. Or it's what the Orphics call the protogonos or phanes. Is the God that has all the elements together. In the Orphic theogony or cosmogony, protogonos is the firstborn. It's called phanes, and it's also the aion, or the eternal being, which appears from the cosmic egg. That's very important, because it also has the voice of fire according to the Hermetic cosmogony. So it's connected to that too. And maybe in music it's also connected with the idea that music is like water in a way, but music is ether and is air, and it is fire also when it has a character that inspires people. No, inspiration and fire also was something connected.
Dr. Moro, you have so it's you could do probably a full course just based on that slide deck you had. It's so rich, and you've thought and researched so much on this stuff. I was just curious, like, what is it about this topic of music and Platonic thought that got you personally interested? What is it that drew you to these investigations?
Thank you. And yes, because I come from a musical family, and my parents play music, violin and piano, and my brothers, and I also play violoncello, and I try to combine all these things in a Pythagorean way, and try to live according to this kind of music that means more than just, as Plato says also here in the Timaeus, that music is more than some kind of entertainment. It's something deeper. I was trying, when I was very little, I started listening to Beethoven, and I was trying to find a meaning behind this music. And I saw that, well, many teachers showed me that there is a very philosophical meaning behind music. And the good thing for me is that we live in a world that divides heart from mind, and a culture that is divided in two. And there is no connection between the different aspects of the human person. And for me, the best way of connecting all the aspects and have an integral education is to study music. And that was the deeper meaning of the word music in Greece. It was the integral education of the human soul and body and everything, no? Because poetry, dance, and music is what connects everything together. No, it's this kind of mixing bowl. No, the music is the mixing bowl for the whole element. I think the crater or crater, no, in English, is you put everything inside music and everything gets mixed. Yes, the golden era is the golden age. Is a way of coming back to the golden age, no, where it was a harmony, no, because the four ages of the world are also related to the Pythagorean Attractives, no. 1, 2, 3, and 4 is the proportion of the four ages of the world. The longest one is the golden age, and then it goes reducing until the iron age, which has the proportion of 1, because it was represented with, I don't remember if it's some animal with 4 legs, but it loses legs. I think that's also an Indian theory, but it appears in many cultures now, the idea that there was this integral being of the human primordial unity that gets divided and dispersed. And music is the art that helps to integrate the soul. I'm not sure if it's one approach as an answer, but this is the music of the Pythagoreans, no? The Platonic and also the Romantic composers. Some of them were trying to revive this kind of music.
See,
Yes.
we had a question from Fraser there. He was asking about, whether you thought, right, you mentioned the Old Testament, and yeah, I mean, do you think that there's influence or of Greek Hellenistic thought on biblical authorship there, or do you see parallels that you think are quite compelling in that regard? And I would assume that, I mean, I'm sure for authors like Ficino, they were always very keen to look for those. And I'd kind of like to ask too, because I mean, of course, they have this conception, as you know, of the Prisca Theologia, right? They're looking, in a sense, right, for, sort of, I mean, they thought in terms of, perhaps the Greeks had drawn on the Hebrew prophetic tradition in some, which would sort of be the other direction of what Fraser is wondering. And I also wondered to what degree, in a sense, because, like, obviously, if Ficino is advising people to listen to Orphic hymns or other pagan compositions, right? I'd be curious, kind of like how does he present this in a way that Christians feel quite comfortable? Clearly, there were many who were like, "This is fine. This isn't," in a sense, we're able to accommodate this within our way of understanding things. And at least part of it might be that, like, I think they didn't see Hermes as a god, but as a great human figure, right? If I recall. But I wonder what else in terms of kind of, the way that they were maybe finding parallels in the texts that told them, in a sense, we don't see a problem here, but we see kind of, the way that these different sages are, bringing out this, I guess, code of the cosmos, right, in ways that complement each other.
Yes, I think this notion of prisca theologia is important to explain all these connections between different traditions and why Ficino and the others could connect all the traditions, and especially in reading the text, they find all these connections between Hermetic text or Kabbalistic text, and prisca theologia means ancient theology, or it was called philosophia perennis also, but prisca theologia means the wisdom about the gods that is primordial. No, priscus is ancient. Prisca is feminine. Prisca theologia is something that the Renaissance philosophers like Ficino were, and Pico della Mirandola and Nicolas de Cusa, of Cusa. Yeah, they were finding this also because Pythagoreanism was always the way of connecting, and Platonism too, the way of connecting different religions and wisdoms, because Platonism is the universal aspect of maybe that is behind the interpretation of this prisca theologia, as for example in Philo of Alexandria, Philo, he interpreted the Genesis or the Ancient Testament, the Old Testament, in Pythagorean terms or Platonic terms, and also reading the Timaeus in harmony with the Genesis. But also we have Numenius that who say that, who connected Plato and Moses, and this idea that there was some kind of primordial wisdom that was divided in, like in the Bible, no? When the division of languages in the Tower of, how do you pronounce in English? Babel. But yes, this division, there was this idea of trying to find the original language, no, or the original knowledge, which is also connected with the idea of the demiurge, because the demiurge is the first giver of names for Proclus. So it's this idea that there is a primordial language that gets divided into local languages. And that's connected again with music, no? Because music is this language that helps connect all the others, or mathematics or metaphysics. Metaphysics are the same in different wisdoms. It's manifested through different imaginations, no? Because for Proclus, the imagination is the projection of these metaphysical ideas. But yes, the mythology, for example, of different peoples for Proclus are connected to the different way of giving some kind of manifestation to metaphysical principles. that could be a first approach, no, to that question, but it's very, very difficult. In a way, what I was trying to show in the presentation is that music is that universal language, or it's called lingua franca, no, the lingua that can help all people to understand each other. And again, it's connected with the noûs, no, and the intellect, because if all people think with the noûs, they will be thinking with the same noûs, as Plotinus says. No, the noûs is a we, is something that we share, but the anoia and the emotions maybe are more depend on different cultures. I'm not sure if yeah, my presentation was a little, I didn't follow a good order, but it was a little disarranged. I hope it would have been more focused, but it was difficult to summarize so much material.
No, of course. Thank you so much. And if you could share the PowerPoint to the group, I think that might be very helpful, so that people could kind of look over some of the diagrams and take it in. And I think that would be very helpful. Yes.
And also, if you want to upload my PhD thesis or other articles, also is possible. And I will share the PowerPoint.
So another thing, we were talking about the noûs and dianoia just there, and of course I was thinking of sort of right in the in the Aristotelian way of conceptualizing it, right? There's sort of the agent intellect, right? Which is kind of, if I understand it properly, I'm trying to remember what there's the agent intellect, and then there's the whatever you call the kind of individuated intellect. But I think a lot of philosophers and mystics thought that kind of the goal, right? They understood divine union as, in a sense, conjunction with the agent intellect, right? And that would be precisely that kind of noetic realization, right?
Yeah.
I think that's it. That's you find that I believe in Avicenna, and also in let's see, the ecstatic Kabbalah of Abraham Abulafia, who's sort of drawing on Maimonides there. I think, I also try to think how this fits into, because one of the famous disagreements in the Western scholastic world was sort of with, right, kind of the more Avicennian and then subsequently Thomistic way of seeing things, and then kind of the Averroistic one, which kind of saw intellect as precisely transpersonal in that way. And it seems like you could have one or the other or both, in a sense. Like you could have precisely that universal intellect and the personal intellect, or you could insist on one or the other. And I think I'm trying to get more of a handle on sort of how that's negotiated.
Yes, that's a very important problem. Yes, of the reception of Aristotle. Yes, it's very important, and the relation between Jewish, Islamic, and Christian philosophy with Aristotle is very important. I think that one way of what you just mentioned about that maybe you can have both is more connected to the Plotinus solution in a way, because the soul has this undescended part, no? That maybe is this transpersonal intellect. And because I think if we interpret that this is something that stays in the intelligible world, and then you have the descended intellect present in the soul, and that will be the personal intellect. But sometimes it's like when you say, if in the mathematical realm, you cannot say that 2 + 2 is 4 is personal, no? we all think with the same mathematical thinking, and maybe with metaphysical principles happens the same. But there is this problem, no, of I think it's one of the Enneads too that says that is Socrates there is some kind of intelligible presence of Socrates, no, in the intelligible realm. But it's a very interesting problem. Yeah, I will need to read again this the problem with Averroes and the Thomistic reception. Is very interesting. Answer that.
Right, because I mean, obviously certain figures. I mean, if I understand correctly, I don't know, certain Franciscans were just very Averroistic in their conception of the intellect, and they connected it to Aquinas's view of divine intellection. You see that in Saint Bonaventure and many others. He's drawing on something called the Summa Hellensis, and then Saint Thomas's teacher, Albertus Magnus. Really, I mean, he has a very, I would say, Platonizing Aristotelianism. Particularly, I mean, his view was that, right, the Liber de Causis, sort of in a sense completed the work of Aristotle. In a sense, like Aristotle in and of himself needed to be fleshed out. Sometimes it was ascribed to Aristotle, but even if it wasn't, they still saw it as, in a sense, completing him. And of course, later figures, in the Dominican school would sort of, draw on Proclus as well, who overlapped with the Liber de Causis, but had additional aspects that they wanted to draw on in order to. But I think they definitely approach, in a sense, that precisely that late Neoplatonic conception of how intellection works. But I think I also want to understand better, right? Like the degree, because all of that, Nicholas of Cusa receives all of that, but I wonder to what degree. I would guess Ficino had access to some of that as well in order to formulate his understanding, as a Platonist, but maybe more directly kind of defining himself against Aristotelianism, still drawing on it presumably, but like in a more, like he and Pico really wanted to say, we're not Aristotelians, we're Platonists, and I'm kind of fascinated to, by what it was that led them to do that, but I don't know, those are just some of the things that.
Yes, no, that's very interesting, because it's the whole reception of Platonism, Aristotelism, and also we are forgetting to mention the Augustinian version of illumination, no? So that's also comes into interplay in this problem, no? And also the Dionysian tradition, no? The pseudo Dionysus, Areopagita, as you were mentioning, no? With the Liber de Causis and other, the Aristotle's theology, that was another text translated from the Arabic, which was the Arabic translation of Plotinus, that some sections that was considered the Theologia of Aristotle. And it's very interesting, this is the Augustinian version, that there is some kind of inner teacher, that is the intellect or the inner illumination that makes us think or produces our intellection, is related to this problem, no? This inner teacher. Who is this inner teacher? But at the same time, it's related to the problem who we are, no? Or who the self, as in other translations. What is the self? No, is it the same self in all persons, or what is the notion of person or individuality? And is it important to be an individuality, or is better to be a person? Or so this problem of the intellect is connected to all this. And what is more is the flower of the one different from the intellect. No, that's consciousness and intellect. There are many problems with this. No, how we translate all these terms that belong to different traditions, but at the same time, even the Greeks have different terms for expressing this self-knowledge, no? Like in the temple of Apollo, this famous know thyself. What does it mean? No, who is? If we are talking about like the Platonists, that there is some kind of divine spark inside the person, which makes the person alive. So this must be something that is connected and also helps the person to connect with that universal intellect. But yes, it's a question that is very complicated, and I think also Merlan has touched on this problem in a book that is called Monopsychism. I don't remember if you know this book. Is Monopsychism? It's I can find it in the internet because I'm not sure that the title. No, Philip Merlan.
Definitely, yeah. I think I do have that one, and I'll be sure to share it.
Yes, it's monopsychism, mysticism, and meta-consciousness. Because we need to think about, that's the book I was trying to think. It also is talking about this topic, no, about the soul, the supra-consciousness or supra-intellect.
And the thing I forgot to bring it before when I was mentioning Maimonides and Abraham Abulafi is that this is precisely the way that Maimonides theorized what it is to be a prophet, right? Which Abulafia picks up on, right? Like, in a sense, if you could attain the requisite degree of unity with the agent intellect, then you would be a prophet. And for the Jewish tradition, certainly compared to Muslim tradition or compared to Christian tradition, the notion of being a prophet is less problematic in a way, because, right? I mean, it's obviously still controversial, but in a sense, because there was this conception, as I understand it, so it was the author of this treatise called the Kuzari by Judah Halevi, right, in defense of the despised faith, he said, basically, and actually this is fast, he took the Shia conception of the way that the imams, right, kind of have kind of this particular divine consciousness, that they receive through the prophetic lineage. And he transposed that to the Jewish people as a whole, right? To create this conception of the Jewish people as a prophetic people in which that capacity that for prophecy resides. And so then taking that forward, right? Maimonides, and then particularly, I mean, what Abulafia did, of course, was that he pursued that just very determinedly and explicitly, and kind of sought to basically crack the prophetic code, right? Like if we do these kinds of contemplative exercises, and with the manipulation of Hebrew letters and different things, then you could become a prophet. That's very fascinating.
Yes, it's connected with this idea of the mediation of the world soul and the prophetic imagination as well, because for Plato in the Timaeus, he mentioned something about the liver when he's depicting the organ of the liver, that this is like a mirror of imagination. So the ancient intellect of Aristotle is also connected with imagination. But now we are talking about this is the universal imagination, which is more something that Henry Corbin would talk about, no? Like in this angelic imagination, or the mundus imaginalis that Corbin studied. And it's connected to all that idea of mediation between the divine and the earthly. So it's connected with this idea of in a way the world soul also, but in other more this idea of the how this is intermediary world, no? Like the mundus imaginalis is some kind of intermediary world, and that's related to prophecy and to Apollo as well, because Apollo for the Platonists is the god of prophecy. So in a way, is connected with the god of music. So we are still in the topic of the Timaeus, and why music is an inspired art, no? Because inspiration is the same topic. Yes,
yes. At the beginning of your presentation, I don't know, just the way you presented it, I felt that Corbinian resonance with his emphasis on the intermediary.
Yes, because I also remember that Corbin mentions Proclus' text of the hieratic art, where Proclus says that all the creation sings, and the flower also sings a hymn to its causes. It's a text that also Corbin mentions, and Corbin has a very interesting article about music. I forgot the name, but I need to find it. But he studies also this idea of metaphysical music. Now I'm forgetting what was the title of this work of. It's just a short article of Corbin about music. Persian music, I think. I think he's talking about Persian music, but I'm not sure. I think it's the mystical Persian music. I'm not sure.
I found one called "On the Meaning of Music in Persian Persian mysticism."
Yeah, that's the article of. That's a very good article about the same topic. Yes, I think it's connected also to Plato's Phaedrus, where Plato talks about the inspiration and how there are different kinds of divine inspiration. And Proclus deals with this topic in his different commentary on the Cratylus, where he mentions Apollo and the Muses. Well, but I think I hope the presentation was not too chaotic, because I shouldn't be talking about harmony and make a little chaotic presentation. But I was jumping from the different images, because it's very
I think it was a coherent, cohesive presentation. But you know, for myself, I look forward to reviewing it more slowly and you know, looking at some of that. And I was also, I'm just related, somebody asked a question earlier, but if I wanted to sort of like follow along and do the calculations, do you think your thesis would cover that, or is it one of is there another book you could recommend that you know, if I wanted to sort of do the math myself and sort of you know, really grasp it that way?
Well, yes, my thesis, and there are also the section about music in the book about Philolaus by Hofmann is a good also introduction for the Hofmann has a book called Philolaus of Croton, and there is a section about the musical ratios, and that's also interesting. And also there are the books by Andrew Barker. Those are more comprehensible of this ancient music theory. But I mentioned that in a section in my PhD thesis, that I think is, yes, it's also, there is a section that explains the ratio with more detail. Because for me, the most interesting part is the philosophical, but I know that it's also important to understand all the technical aspects at the same time.
I saw a book by Barker called The Science of Harmonics in Classical Greece. Is that a...
well, that's one of his books, but there is another called Ancient Greek Music Writings, Volume 2.
Ancient Greek Writers on Their Musical Past? Is that the one?
No, ancient...
Oh, Greek Musical Writings, Volume 1.
Greek Musical Writings, that one, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Philolaus of Croton has a... because many of these musical theory themes are in Plato are from Philolaus. Okay, and I think I need to go to sleep, and because here it's a little late, but I hope we can continue talking about the Timaeus and in the next sessions.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Sebastian, for joining us. And yeah, we look forward to the next time. So glad you could join us, and thank you for your presentation.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me for the presentation, and also for listening. And yes, I hope you find the musical aspects of the Timaeus a little more understandable. Okay, and until the next time.